I don't know how anybody kept that up for any length of time. The amount of energy those men have put into starting their episodes of their channels is way more energy than I ever possessed in my entire life. Welcome. Welcome back to like Talking Tuesday / what do we call it? Tea time? God, I hope you all brought your caffeine because we're in for a treat. Some updates. There's going to be a Debate Hub stream on Thursday, Dumbfeck Friday on Friday. I am in the works of scheduling some more stuff, so we should see that soon. I also have some more D&D stuff to talk about and a few videos that are coming out because I actually got some scripting done. So, yay! I hope everybody's excited. I got a fancy Bob Ross t-shirt. Look at that. Look at that man. I'm going to make him sad today by being mean to people. Probably. Maybe. How's everybody? Good? Bad? The ugly? I hope to hear good things. I should probably turn the rest of my stream on, shouldn't I? There you go. There's live chat. Hey. Over there. There you are. I've also got a little boo down here. Little goblin boo. Oh, little guy. Happy Thanksgiving to any Canadians out there that are currently enjoying or got to enjoy their long weekend. Happy Thanksgiving down the line for you Americans out there who will be enjoying that soon. And today we are going to talk about Matt Dillahunty. Now, we've talked about Matt Dillahunty on this stream before, or on this channel before a couple of times, because he has a bad tendency of doing things that are dumb or don't make any sense. So I haven't watched this yet, so we're getting a live take from me about what we're gonna see here. But I imagine I'm going to have some opinions. This was dropped in the Discord. And if you feel like joining us on the Discord, feel free to, member or Patreon, and you'll get access to that and all the good times that we have in there. So, dude, I don't want to keep talking about you. Can you stop? Oh yeah, recap for anybody who doesn't know who Matt Dillahunty is. He's he was the director for the Atheist community of Austin. He was on the ACA show back when it was a cable-produced show. He's the reason a lot of people have left the ACA and kind of don't like the direction that it went in. He's kind of like, debate me, bro. He's also, well, maybe we'll find out in this video if he's currently going to continue to work with Jimmy Snow, who is, I guess, most well known at this point for using his fan base as a dating pool and being kind of ick. So we'll see if they're still continuing to work together. I'm not entirely sure. But yeah, that's who Matt Dillahunty is. I think he did a debate with Jordan Peterson once. So, yeah, Mr. Hang Up. Yeah, he likes to hang up on whether or not somebody is right or wrong. His shtick is, I hang up on theists who think there's a god. That's basically his shtick. So, let's hit play and see what we got here. Because who knows? Maybe prediction. He's going to have a couple of points in a bubble, but I feel like overall there's probably going to be problematic. So let's see. Hello?
All right, so it shows that I'm live. Let me get right into this, first of all.
Good morning.
Let me also mute me so that you don't hear me looping back to myself, something I did earlier today and failed to do right. Hank, thanks everybody for tuning in.
Everyone needs a producer. I get it. I'm the same way.
Let me start with a little teal what this isn't going to be. This is not a walkthrough of everything that's ever happened in the history of the ACA. It's not a so-and-so is a lying, lazy fraud, and I'm glad they left message. It's not a rehash of issues from years ago. It's not a nuclear bomb that shits all over the ACA. My health is fine and improving. There won't be any questions or super chats or monetization. This has been an incredibly difficult week for me.
I am monetized. Give me money. Sorry.
And this isn't an easy statement to make, but 17 years deserves more than just I'm done. I'm not stopping. I'm just not working with the ACA anymore. And if you don't care about the story, that's cool. I get it. Head on out. This is my take on events over the past year. I'm not putting up screenshots, though I have them, and I'm not mentioning names. I'm not going to show you any emails because while I saved them and while I'm still a life member of the ACA, although I guess they've probably revoked it now, they've disabled my email address so that I no longer have access to those emails. So I'll be paraphrasing things. I haven't at this.
So the first information I'm getting is that he's had his email revoked from the ACA. That's kind of interesting. Huh. I mean, that's not terribly uncommon when an employee leaves a workspace that though you no longer have access to whatever email that you had through that workspace because it may or may not contain like secret, like source secrets and stuff like that, like company specific information that you're not supposed to have access to once you're no longer a member or part of that company. So that's not that surprising, and I find it odd that if he wanted those emails and knew he was leaving, why he wouldn't have downloaded them. But okay.
Point told the organization anything other than my announcement, and they haven't spoken to me. In the old days, the atheist community of Austin was entirely volunteer run. It was.
All right, I'm going to stop him right there. Okay. This is the first time that I've watched this, so bear with me. He just explained how this isn't going to be a walkthrough and how he's not going to talk about things in the past and then is immediately starting with the beginning of the ACA when he actually starts getting into it. So this also looks like he might have scripted, which I don't think is a bad thing. If you're going to make a big video like this, scripting is generally a good idea in general, so that way you're able to keep on track and you don't get distracted by or like off on tangents, which is really easy to happen. But like this is like he's starting off with back in the old days. All right, let's hear what he actually has to say. I'm being a little bit pedantic.
Is an organization that grew to the point where we had to add an employee. We own a building. I say we. I'm going to stop saying we as soon as I get used to it. And there's more than we could rely on for volunteers. You cannot count on volunteers exclusively with this much work to do to manage a building and programs. Now the ACA is up to about 5 employees, and I would say that 2 or 3 of them are absolutely necessary, and the rest I have differing opinions on how valuable their roles are. But this past weekend, I've never felt more unwelcome, less respected, and less valued in my entire time with the ACA. I have no more confidence in the organization's leadership. I'm not telling anyone to not support them. Support me, support them, support both, support neither. My co-hosts are amazing. There are tons of volunteers producing content for them. They are all wonderful, and they are all caring about the mission. Here's the backstory. Last November.
Okay. So we're starting off with I was respected and now I feel like I'm not being respected. I'm going to give a little bit of backstory then, just to contextualize this, because you should feel like you're respected in the workplace. You should feel like you matter in the workplace. And any good boss will tell you that even if your employees aren't respected and what they do doesn't really matter to them, they should background noise. Even if your employees aren't respected, any manager will tell you that it's important that your employees feel like they are, right? So that's just a matter of navigation and makes sense. However, I'm going to contextualize this a little bit by saying Matt is known for disrespecting people. Like, that's part of his whole shtick, is being a disrespectful twat. Like, that he was I'm the asshole. And like, that filtered into, from stories that we've heard from other employees about why they left, was Matt's behavior and the way he treated people in that space and how they felt. So now it's just like, oh, it sounds to me that this sounds like, oh, the problem I created is now happening to me. Oh no, how dare it? But maybe I'm jumping the gun. Maybe there's more to it. So let's hear out the full story. And yeah, I'll check that right now. Thanks, Godless Scummer. Also, hello, hi everybody. Hello, thank you for joining me. Thank you. I appreciate you being here. You sent it on Discord, yeah. Let me just pull that up. You did not send it on Discord. You sent it on Twitter. Okay. Hold on. Yes. Atheist community of Austin working to do better. Yeah, we'll take a look at that after we see what Matt has to say.
The ACA implemented a policy that prevented any member of production from serving on the board. I resigned from the board on that day because it was pointless to keep going for a month, and pointed out the problems I had with this policy. I mentioned that there was no plan to replace any of us, and that a policy like this should wait if it should be implemented at all. The concern was a circular reporting structure for employees. Production answers to the board, and the production people answer to employees answer to the board, and production staff answer to the production employees. And so there could have been a circle where some of us were on the board and we were in production, and so the employees were in this loop between. Now, the issue of whether or not someone like me would have less control as a board member than as a person just engaging in content creation is debatable. But just being a board member doesn't mean that you have control. There's already methods in place. Employees can go to the board and say, hey, this person in production is trying to get me to do something, and they're flaunting the fact that they're on a board. And then the board should take action against that person. And similarly, if any employee is told by a board member to do something, their response should be, once you get approval from the board, and I get that as a direction from the board rather than just a member of the board, I'll do it. There's no real conflict here, but they weren't listening. It's all lawyers and nonprofit experts dictating policy with no regard to the fact that this organization is unlike any other nonprofit you're likely to find.
So if I'm understanding correctly, what he's trying to say is that he didn't like that he couldn't be a front-facing person and a board member at the same time. Was there anybody else besides Matt who was a board member and somebody in the production staff? Was there anybody else? Because he's the only board member that I'm aware of that had an active show, and an active show on other platforms. So much so, and so similar too, that people thought that the hang up on Jimmy Show's channel was associated with the ACA when it was not. Can we also point out that being a board member doesn't mean you couldn't make your own content? It just means that you wouldn't be making content for the ACA, and you would have to differentiate those two things. Something that Matt was already confusing. Yeah, lawyers need to be involved when it comes to making policy. What do you want the ACA to be? If it's a nonprofit for helping atheists, then you need to follow the legal jargon that goes along with that and that responsibility that goes with it. And when you say there's no conflict of interest here, what do you mean? Because if you're on the production staff and you're a board member, the conflict of interest is your own show. When you're a board member, you're going to prioritize the board's decisions to your own production staff and your own show. That's the conflict of interest. Not that you would choose things that were necessarily bad for production or were better for production overall. It's just that you would favor or not favor your own show, because you can go too far the other way in conflict of interest, right? You can go, oh, I'm favoring my own stuff a lot. Or you can say, well, because I'm worried I'm going to favor my own stuff too much, I'm going to not give it anything, which means the other people that are part of your production staff suffer. So yeah, no, there's absolutely a conflict of interest there. So I'm gonna put this back just a tiny bit, just a little baby bit, just so I can hear out what he has to say. Because like this doesn't make any sense to me. This sounds like normal expectation when, as a culture and I mean like a working culture, and as a production or a show or a nonprofit gets larger, you have to make yourself a board to keep yourselves in check. Right? It doesn't just get to be whatever X person says, X, Y, and Z, because they're the biggest face of the show or because they're a board member. But if you're the director of the ACA or on the board or a chair on the ACA and you're the biggest face on the show, yeah, of course people are going to have a problem with you being both of those things because you have so much control and power. It is absolutely about that. That makes complete sense. But I can also understand why somebody who is in that position wouldn't want to give that up, right? I kind of can understand this, but we'll see. We'll see.
Against that person. And similarly, if any employee is told by a board member to do something, their response should be, once you get approval from the board, and I get that as a direction from the board rather than just a member of the board, I'll do it. There's no real conflict here, but they weren't listening. It's all lawyers and nonprofit experts dictating policy with no regard to the fact that this organization is unlike any other nonprofit you're likely to find.
Why would you not want nonprofit experts in your corner if you're running a nonprofit? Even if it is slightly different or unique, it's a special snowflake of an organization. Not that I'm convinced that it is, but yeah.
I'm not aware of any other nonprofit that has media production as its primary foundation, with public figures as the face of the organization, while somebody else makes the decision. The board of directors went from 9 down to 6, and then down to 5, and then they replaced one. 10 months later, as far as I know, the board of directors is still at 6. They've added a director of communications, but the website isn't being updated all that much. There was an update on August 16th announcing the end of month show. There wasn't one announcing for September. There was not enough stuff about the Bat Cruise. I don't feel that I know what's going on. And I was the first president after the ACA changed its bylaws. Prior to that, we had co-chairs. They were the people that ran it. So I wasn't the first person to run the organization. So
I was correct. He was a chair and a director.
First president after a bylaw change. That brings a dedication to the organization and a duty to protect it, even if I take a personal hit. And I lived that for 17 years. Anytime anything would happen, I got attacked. It didn't matter if I was in charge of anything or not. I wasn't on the board during the kerfuffle, and I took no action without direct approval from the president and vice president at the time, yet I got attacked as part of the primary problem, as the primary problem. I specifically left the board.
Okay, that's a nonsense complaint. And I'll explain why. When you become the face of the organization, right, you are representing the organization, and the organization makes a misstep. As the first person that people think of or know of, or as the front-facing individual, you're going to take the flack for that. That's the drawback of being the person who's also getting all the attention, of the person who's getting all the views, the person who has whatever pull that they do or do not have. Right? Whether or not Matt thinks he had pull within the ACA or not, because he's trying to doing both here. He's like, yeah, did I really have any power? There was no conflict of interest. You did have pull. You had power. You were a chair. You were a director. That's all influence at the very least. Matt also is one of the most influential people in the online atheist space. So what do you expect? You can't have your cake and eat it too. If you're going to be the one responsible with with this much power, whether it be within the ACA or whether it be as a social or public figure, you're going to, of course, take the public hit to your reputation because of the decisions that the group you're associated is making. This is just normal. This is just how it works. This is the exact same reason why people who are like, why Disney has so many policies as to how their actors are allowed to behave and why they're so strict about it and why they're so stringent. This is normal. This is to be this is nothing special. If you are the face of something and that something fucks up, you're the first person people are going to go to because you're representing yourself as the person to go to. Huh? Nani?
So there wouldn't be any undue influence from me. I wasn't trying to control everything. When I stopped being president, I stayed away from all of it. There have been several presidents in between. I didn't want to influence people in their decision-making about this.
Whether you wanted to or not, you would have. Your intentions versus... And this is just going to go to how much weight are people, as individuals, going to decide to put in on what you intended to happen versus what the result of whatever action or inaction you decided, right? So if you're saying, hey, I didn't want any power and I didn't want to have any influence, but the company was making poor decisions that I didn't agree with, but I was still the front face of this company, so I was taking all the hits. Like, yeah, what a martyr. Like, so you made bad decisions and took hits when you didn't need to, but did anyway? Like, what are you saying? That is, if you weren't in the position where you could speak out against them because of a contract or disagree or like this is very wishy-washy. This is a lot of words to not. It's waffling. That's the word I'm looking for. This is waffling. Either you had power and influence or you didn't have power and influence. Like it or not, as the front, you can't say I was the front face of this, but I didn't want to have any influence, and I just took all the hits as the front-facing person. No, when you're the front-facing person, you have influence. Period. End of sentence. Being a board member or not may change the kind of influence you have, but you can't tell me that for the past year plus, Matt Dillahunty hasn't had any influence in the ACA whatsoever and was just, being a nice guy and just taking sucker punches. What? And even if that were the case, that's just poor decision making on your part. What? No, I am not associated with the ACA. I am generally a considerably often outspoken critic of the ACA. All right, I'm going to keep going.
I've never taken a penny from the atheist community of Austin. I've donated my time and money to the organization. A lot of it.
Wait. Sorry, I'm going to have to replay that. Matt never made any money in the ACA? I mean, I'm assuming directly. Like, that's not... I'm assuming this doesn't include, like, notoriety or I got paid in exposure, blah, 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 blah. So throughout all the years that Matt Dillahunty worked for the ACA, it was all volunteer work. Because I'm gonna need to see some books on that. I don't know if I believe that on face value. Because that seems... I'm skeptical. I'm skeptical of that.
Dedication to the organization and a duty to protect it, even if I take a personal hit. And I lived that for 17 years. Anytime anything would happen, I got attacked. It didn't matter if I was in charge of anything or not. I wasn't on the board during the kerfuffle, and I took no action without direct approval from the president and vice president at the time, yet I got
The kerfuffle?
attacked as part of the primary problem, as the primary problem. I specifically left the board so that there wouldn't be any undue influence from me. I wasn't trying to control everything. When I stopped being president, I stayed away from all of it. There have been several presidents in between. I didn't want to influence people in their decision-making about this. I've never taken a penny from the atheist community of Austin. I've donated my time and money to the organization, a lot of it, to the point of risking my reputation and my health in order to keep the ACA on mission, because that was the important thing.
When he says keep the ACA on mission, which mission is he talking about? Because the ACA, as we've seen it for the past, I'll be nice and say 3 years, is not the same mission that the ACA started with on cable TV. The original shows in ACA and intention of the ACA was to present atheists as we're just people too. We're not Satan. We're not the devil. We go through stuff, ask us questions, open, honest discussion. That shifted. It started opening up to like things like parenting, women's stuff. Then it opened up further and turned into a political movement, which is something entirely different. So when you say, I was sacrificing myself to keep the ACA on mission, which mission are you talking about? Because from my understanding, the last 3 years, the ACA has spent a hell of a lot of time demonizing people. Poor Matt Dillahunty. He had no control over any of this. He wasn't trying to influence anything.
I didn't even monetize my personal YouTube channel until this stuff started happening in June. This channel you're watching right now wasn't even monetized until after the events I'm going to describe started happening.
Does that include the hang-up? Because this was on Matt Dillahunty's personal channel. Matt, were you getting paid for the hang-up? Did people think that the hang-up on Jimmy Snow's channel was associated with the ACA? Was monetizing your channel part of your deal or contract with the ACA about being a figurehead for them or being the public persona for them? Because that could be the case, and that wouldn't even be outside of a standard contract. If you had an exclusivity contract or clause, then the issue is with the contract you signed and agreed to. So there's some context here that I think would be useful.
I did that for credibility so that people would be like, oh, Matt's just in it for money. But it didn't keep people from accusing me of being a control monger who's using the ACA as a bank account. I've given up money that I could have easily made by monetizing this channel, and that's changed now. This channel is now monetized. The organization never defended me against any of these accusations, and that was largely okay because it's just one of the unfortunate side effects of being the public face of the organization. And
if it's one of the unfortunate side effects, then it was part of something you agreed to, so you can stop complaining about it. Secondly, yes, they did. The ACA absolutely protected Matt Dillahunty. Absolutely. What are you talking about? Are you saying that your influence with the ACA didn't prevent people from speaking out against you? Because that's definitely not what we've heard from people who have spoken out against Matt Dillahunty. Or are you saying that your influence that you got as a public figure didn't stifle criticism towards you? Like we've got Eric in the chat saying, trying to stifle criticism of the things you're saying right now by being dismissive of it entirely to the point of not even addressing it? Bullshit. Complete bullshit. Come on. Please.
I was willing to take it to protect the ACA and the mission. I've had people attempt to blackmail me. I've had people attempt to get me removed. They've attacked me. They've attacked my partners. They've made it personal, all sorts of things. That
kind of sounds like Steve. Weird.
That won't happen anymore. I don't have to sacrifice my own reputation to help an organization. So let me tell you a story. An organization is producing media and they have something happen and it's a problem. It's not a huge problem, but it's a problem. And so they investigate and then they apologize publicly and then they change policies to make sure it doesn't happen again. And we all move on doing better. That's what we would expect from any organization. And some would say that that is what happened recently with the Atheist Community of Austin. But that's not what happened. That's the public-facing actions of what happened. And it doesn't match what happened behind the scenes, just like the nice message that they posted about me the other day leaving doesn't match them not talking to me and disabling my email account and other things. I'm going to go through the timeline of this as quickly as I can. An incident occurs on Truth Wanted, which causes a problem in the after show Discord. The Discord sends out an apology. One of our hosts objects to the apology, as do I. And then I wind up in a 3-hour meeting with some board members and production staff pointing out that we need to do more and that we need to be proactive and apologize, that we can't risk our reputation being damaged with the LGBTQIA community. I then got volunteered for a core values group, which in some sort of corporate make-work bullshit that addressed nothing. On June 6th, I had a meeting with production. We had a good talk about the issues and we're optimistic about things getting better. And then
okay, so I'm getting a little bit confused about Matt switching between we and I. And I think this is just that he's so used to speaking as like we, the ACA. And it's the way this is written. When he says that we had a meeting and we were looking forward positively to what was discussed and positive change looking forward, I'm not sure if he's referring to that was the conclusion of the ACA, because he was immediately saying that he was against whatever bureaucratic bullshit he called it. So I might just be getting confused, so I'm not going to comment too much on this. I just want to note that I'm a little bit confused about when he's saying that, hey, yeah, no, we were looking forward to positive change. I'm not sure if he's including himself in that statement or not. But that just might be a little bit of confusion on my part.
Board member replied to me and my core values email with an incredibly problematic and tone-deaf message, which I was later told was perfectly acceptable and factual and there was nothing wrong with it by the people in charge. Despite it asking questions like, do we have to hunt down every trans person who has a problem with us? And should they all get a say in our policies? I'm paraphrasing because they removed my access to that email account and I don't want to dig up the copies that I had elsewhere.
So you're being lazy and you don't want to actually show it. Okay. That's fine. for a whole platform built on show don't tell, and we take evidence, not whatever you believe or your word based on memory. I'm a little bit skeptical of. Nah, I just didn't feel like looking up the email. Okay. It sounds to me that just from what Matt described there was that his emails to the board were sarcastic. Like, oh, are we supposed to just hunt down every trans person and make sure that they like us? Like, what? Okay. Okay. But I don't understand. I took so many hits for the ACA. Why did they get tired of my shit? Okay. All right. Brutal Brewer said they blocked his email. Well, they removed his access to his email, but he just said that he had other copies that he could dig up of that email that he's referring to that he just referred to. At least that's what he's saying.
On June 7th, I typed up a response to that email, but I didn't send it because I wanted to try to keep working with the organization. I typed up 2 emails then, one that gave the backstory that led up to the problem on Truth Wanted. And another one was about just general transphobia, public perception, and how it was important for us to apologize. Those last 2 emails have still never been answered at all. And now I'll never know if they are going to. They won't be.
So yeah, Godless Gummer sent me the Truth Wanted email, and I'll read it off to you. It says, working to do better together, Atheist Community of Austin. The Atheist Community of Austin produces multiple shows weekly that use a call-in format to allow the exploration of ideas and afford opportunities to confront bigotry, hatred, and prejudice. One of the ACA's programs recently took a live call from an individual who had, in the past, personally attacked by doxing, harassing, and blackmailing show hosts who are associated with another ACA program. We regret allowing this caller on an ACA show and apologize for any distress it may have caused. The caller's behaviors are inconsistent with ACA's values, and we are concerned that allowing this caller airtime for any topic on any ACA show contradicts the ACA core positions. The ACA is rigorously reviewing our policies to protect against a recurrence of this issue and further clarify show caller protocols. We are making these changes to safeguard our hosts and volunteers, to reinforce our commitment to our position statement, and to remove opportunities for individuals intent on finding venues to humiliate or harass others. Personally identifiable information has been removed to protect the identity of the individuals targeted. So that was the apology that the ACA gave. Pretty standard. There's not any actual like breakdown of what was here it is. So because I'm not lazy, there's the link to it so you can read it yourselves. This doesn't seem like that big of a deal. It like accidents happen, so whether or not you want to treat what happened with that show as an accident or if you think it was more purposefully malicious, you can have your own opinion on that. That's fine. I'm not telling you you're wrong. What I'm getting at is like that is a very standard, like, yeah, we need to do better. If I were to criticize that, I would say you should say what the policy changes are going to be moving forward. And then making sure it doesn't happen again. So if you say, hey, we're going to update our caller policy. This guy got through by accident. Our safeguards failed. We are doing more to educate or to train the people that we've got screening the calls and are adding this policy and then lay the policy out. That would mean more overall because then at least you've shown movement. Whereas this is like a very standard, like, yeah, we're sorry. We're doing our best. So.
On June 10th, after 3 days of waiting, I asked if those emails had been received because I hadn't gotten an answer. And I was told that they had been and that they would be posting something that addressed them. On June 10th, they posted an ACA AC Discord working together document, which is a perfectly fine after action report that went over what happened, what went wrong, and how they would go about fixing it. But it also focused almost exclusively on the relationship between the Atheist Community of Austin and the Discord. It didn't focus on the relationship with the LGBTQIA plus community at all. That relationship wasn't mentioned. This gave a problematic impression that they cared more about their relationship with the Discord than they did with the community. I'm not saying that's true.
Sorry, the Discord is part of the community. So sometimes there are tiers, right? So the ACA Discord would be considered part of the community, and it would be community members that you have direct access to, right? So I can post whatever on my website and do a general apology, but there's a good number of viewers that aren't going to see it because they're not engaged in that way. The Discord is one of the most direct ways you could engage with your audience besides me just reading off your chat right now and trying to have a conversation or a call-in, right? So reaching out to the Discord first is not something terribly surprising. Like that actually makes a lot of sense to me. Like I definitely understand why you would want to do that. That makes sense to me. So I'm not sure I understand this complaint.
That's the impression that it gave, and warning them about the consequences of giving that impression was the goal. That document also specifically stated that, hey, we're not looking to place blame. There's no responsibility here, no apology. Let's just work better. At this point, I forwarded the reply that I hadn't sent to the other problematic email. And as the policy doc did not actually address my emails, I sent an email to the board saying that I would be withdrawing from on-screen work until my concerns were addressed. This was June 12th. My concerns were twofold: the communication problems with the board and the apology for what happened.
Okay, so that makes sense. He is throwing his weight around. He's throwing his influence around as a public figure to get to get the board to move in a direction that he wants. This is, again, we're back to, this is not uncommon. However, that is not applicable to what he was saying earlier. What he said earlier was that he didn't want any influence, recused himself from any influence, and didn't have any control over what the board was deciding to do. Now he's saying that he was trying to use his influence as the public figure and as the face to influence and change and direct the board or the ACA to move in a direction that he wants. None of these things are necessarily wrong to do, by the way. If you have influence in your workspace and it's moving in a position that you're not comfortable with and you want to make change that you believe is going to be good and positive change, then it makes sense to do that. I'm not faulting Matt Dillahunty for wanting to throw his weight around. What I'm taking issue with, though, is if you're throwing your influence around, don't pretend you're not, and don't pretend you don't have any influence. You're getting benefits for the negatives that come with being the public person. Did Matt take flack for things that he probably wasn't responsible for? Sure. But when you recuse yourself from that responsibility, but remain being the public face, you're trying to have your cake and eat it too. You don't get to complain about that because you're saying, hey, listen, you guys do whatever you're going to do. I'm just going to be the public face and reap all the benefits without taking any of the responsibility because you're recusing yourself from that responsibility. Right?
Without that apology, I was going to threaten to quit the organization. 2 days later, they had a board meeting. I wasn't invited. I wasn't invited to discuss anything.
That's okay. You recused yourself. Why would you be invited to the board meeting if you're not part of the board anymore? Of course you wouldn't be part of that meeting. Duh.
On the 16th, they released an apology in email. Some would claim that this apology was coming the whole time, but I had no way to know that. I called the director to ask where we were publishing the apology, and they asked me, what do you mean? And so I asked again. I was dumbfounded that somebody would ask, what do you mean, where are we publishing it? And their response is, it's already been published. And I asked them where, and they said, on the website.
Well, yeah, so if you said where you publish it, talk about making a mountain out of a molehill. So they published it. Then you asked them why they where they were publishing it, and they said, what do you mean? And then you were gobsmacked because you didn't know that they had already published it on a website you are part of. that you're the public face representing. Bro. And now you're acting like that was a big deal. Like, why would you present? Here's the thing. Why would you present it this way? The order of events that you just presented is they sent out an email with an apology. I asked them where they were publishing it. They said, "What do you mean?" I was surprised because how could you have an apology like this and not have it published anywhere? They said they already published it. So why wouldn't you say, "Oh, I didn't realize they had," like, why would you present it this way instead of saying something along the lines of, "Oh, so they sent this email out, and so I asked where they publish it, and it turns out they already had published it." The framing of this is what's throwing red flags at me. Why are you framing this like, "Oh my god, I couldn't believe that they were asking what do you mean when I asked where they would publish it," as if they weren't publishing it. But they had already published it. Like, why would you say it this way? You've scripted this.
And I asked if that's all we were doing, and they noted that they'd sent it in an email to me and others. This prompted an argument where it was clear that they didn't understand my issues and wasn't familiar with the email exchange that I'd had, though they had been copied on it. I told them that we needed to read and promote the apology on at least Truth Wanted. That's very important. That's all we wanted. They already wrote an apology. They put it on the website. I just wanted to make sure we.
I agree with this. I absolutely 100% agree with what Matt's saying here. If you want an apology to have any kind of influence or have any kind of impact, then you need to address it in the space that the error occurred. So public, I mean, I use a phrase, it's public issues require public address. You can't address things in the background for problems that have been created publicly. Right? I 100% agree with Matt on this. It makes complete sense that if you're going to apologize for something that happened on your show, that you highlight that apology on the show in which the incident occurred. 100% agree. I approve, Matt Dillahunty. Good for you for standing up, for getting that apology out there where it needed to go. It is also possible that the apology made its way around the Discord as well, which would make it more accessible than just on the website, which would be a good thing. But that's me giving the ACA the benefit of the doubt, and I don't have that information.
Addressed it on Truth Wanted. No, I can't slow down. I got stuff to do. I spent an hour or so on the phone with leadership and thought we'd come to an understanding, and I headed off to a movie. During that call, I mentioned that the board isn't communicating well, that nobody knows what's going on, that they don't commit to things publicly, they don't acknowledge things publicly, that the email that I got from that was problematic almost made me quit.
Well, we know that's not true from what he was describing before, right? They sent out an email, they sent out an email and they had already published an apology. It just didn't go where Matt thought it should have gone, which I agree with him about. But we also know that they are committing to things and they are talking to the community. They're just not communicating with Matt Dillahunty on a level that Matt Dillahunty is comfortable with because he's not getting invited to board meetings when he's not a board member anymore. Right? When you give up that position, you don't get to know everything that's going on anymore. And to be fair, that can be really jarring and that can be really hard to let go of. And I'm sympathetic towards that. However, it doesn't mean that they aren't doing things that they're supposed to or they're doing things that they're not supposed to.
And after talking about all this, I was told that they hadn't even read that email. And I'm like, how can you think you've addressed my concerns when you haven't even read the emails that were the problem 6 days after I sent them? 15 minutes before the movie started, I got a text message or a message, an email, I think, that read, "Thanks so much for talking with me today. I want to get back to you today regarding your interest in having the board statement read at the beginning of Truth Wanted. Given the positive response we've received from the stakeholders involved, we feel our existing course of action is effectively addressing your concerns. After much discussion among the leadership, production staff, and stakeholders, we have determined that reading the statement at the beginning of the show is neither warranted nor advisable." Now, I was sitting here saying, this is important. We should apologize. We should make it public. This is a win-win scenario. Nothing bad can happen from being better and apologizing. But they wanted to put it up on a website, and they didn't think it was advisable to talk about it. A website that people don't know about, weren't addressing. So I asked if that was their final decision, given that I had threatened to quit. And what I got back was, I said, hey, I just got to this movie. Is this the final decision? And the text message I got back was, oh crap, try to enjoy the movie. And that's the last message I ever got about this.
They apologize for ruining your bad time. So here's the thing. Decisions being made from a legal perspective of what they can get in trouble for, right, versus potentially exacerbating an issue. And this is something that can go either way in this specific scenario, right? So if you've got a situation where a caller was allowed on the show that made a bunch of people uncomfortable because they've done things in other places, and those things include harassment and doxing, things that are considered crime, then you, from a legal point of view and from a board point of view, from you need to protect the nonprofit that you're a part of. Not acknowledging that you had any part or any association with that individual might be the best course of action possible, because you're talking about an LLC, or you're talking about a nonprofit. And so to protect itself, it can't get tied into whatever potential legal issue could come along with somebody saying, well, you let that person on that show and that made that person's dox of me more of a thing, so you're responsible, so I'm going to sue you. Right? From a general individual moral quandary about whether or not an individual should apologize publicly or not on their platform wherever the issue took place is a lot different when you're talking about an individual, not a legal situation. It's not as simple as it might seem, is what I'm getting at. So what do you want to do? Do you want to risk the ACA being sued for potential damages, which is he was complaining about a legal team, or is this a PR decision? Does the ACA even have a PR person? Or is this board members making decisions about what they believe is going to be good for the bottom line, or the mission, whichever mission you may be referring to? Or are we talking about the perspective of a viewer or the face or the person who's saying, hey, it's not my show, it's that other show that's going to take the flack instead of me taking the flack because I'm taking flack. Right? Sorry, God, we're not addressing who the caller was because we're not really talking about exacerbating the specific issue. We're kind of talking about like the overarching understanding. This can easily just be viewed as we have a separate view of ideas and what direction that we want to take in. Matt Dillahunty is basically claiming that he has more integrity and wants more forward and open communication or more transparency, and they're having a disagreement, and the board, which he recused himself from, isn't behaving the way he would like them to behave, and he's not getting information he would prefer to have. Again, information that he chose to recuse himself from. So let's keep going and see.
Until the next day when a different person messaged to let me know that it was the final decision.
Oh yeah, by the way, Matt's not necessarily entirely wrong about his idea of how to handle the situation. Right? This might be just a situation where nobody's really wrong, and it's really just going to be a mattering of like your opinion and how much potential legal risk would have been involved.
I sent an email and a message requesting to know who the stakeholders, leadership, and production were, because I'd been talking to people who I thought were valuable and essential stakeholders for this. And of course, they wouldn't tell me. That's corporate kind of typical stuff. And I understand why they're not naming names, but I needed to find out what the policies were. I was sitting here saying, I'm the producer and the main host of the Atheist Experience. If this is something that had happened on AXP, would I be considered a stakeholder? Would I be considered production staff for that? Would I be involved in this decision? Because
that's a fair question. It's important to make sure that if you are what your policies are as a group, like they need to be clear. But I don't know, as a director at one point, why and as somebody who was a donator, why Matt didn't have access to this information already. Or what, like, is he implying that this information was being kept from him? Like, this seems bizarre to me. I don't know, as if you're a producer but you're volunteering, then you're not staff, right? Because there's like a difference between like an employee and a volunteer. So you'd be volunteer staff, you wouldn't be an employee staff. So an employee staff might have more of a stake, but it seems to me that this is the way it's coming across so far, and we're 13 minutes into it. We're about halfway through. It's coming off to me that Matt gave up a position of power, control, and information that he chose to give up because he wanted to stay being a face. He wanted to stay making shows. Fine decision to make, no problem. But now he's complaining that it's going in a direction that he doesn't have any control of, and it doesn't have access to information that he gave up the right to. And like, that's fine if you're not comfortable with that and you want to leave. Yeah, sure, whatever. But the thing you're complaining about now is the thing that you chose. Right. Wants to have his cake and eat it too.
the people I talked to were all in favor of reading the apology, and most of them hadn't been consulted.
Because it was a corporate decision. Because it wasn't a decision to be made by you're demonstrating exactly why the people who are producing and making content are not on the board. Because there's a difference, because it's a conflict of interest. You want what's best for your audience and your show. What's best for your audience, your show, and maybe your individual reputation is not what's going to be good for the nonprofit necessarily. There's more things to be considered here. You're not one person. You have to be considered about the whole thing. And you have to be aware of your status as a nonprofit. And you have to be aware of your position from a legal standpoint and what you can get in trouble for and what will cause you and won't cause you to lose your tax-exempt status. Looking at you, Atheist Alliance International. Got the scummer for two, said the ACA looked at AAI and said, hold my beer. Yes. Yes, same thing. There's been more than once that there's been like a lack of transparency in the ACA, and that was when Matt was on the board. Like this is not new. It's just it's almost coming across well, this was fine when it happened before, but now it's happening to me and I don't like it. It's like, well, yeah. What did you expect? It's like, well, I gave so much loyalty and put so many years into this, therefore they owe me and they should do what I tell them to do, which is just not the way it works.
Nobody that I talked to had been consulted. And then I asked what would happen if I were to go on Atheist Experience and read, hey, we just posted this apology on the website. I don't understand how that could be problematic, but I let them know that I'd be staying, but we had some stuff to work on. On June 19th, after...
Wait. So you tried to throw your weight around. You were like, hey, listen. Matt was like, hey, listen, you do things this way, or I'm uncomfortable and I'm going to leave. They told you no, and you said, okay, well, I'm going to keep working. And you asked, are you sure that's the final decision? I'm going to leave. They said, yeah, that's our final decision. You said, okay, well, I'll keep working for you, but we have some terms to work on. I can't imagine why things might have gone downhill from here. You can't just drop "I'm leaving" on the table and then just pretend you didn't. What? Okay. All right.
If this is something that had happened on AXP, would I be considered a stakeholder? Would I be considered production staff for that? Would I be involved in this decision? Because the people I talked to were all in favor of reading the apology, and most of them hadn't been consulted. Nobody that I talked to had been consulted. And then I asked, what would happen if I were to go on Atheist Experience and read, hey, we just posted this apology on the website. I don't understand how that could be problematic, but I let them know that I'd be staying, but we had some stuff to work on. On June 19th, after deciding to stay instead of blowing everything up, I found out that they'd be reading or announcing the apology on Talk Heathen and Atheist Experience, but no one told me what the statement was.
It's because it's not your show. You're not the one in control anymore. You don't get a say. It doesn't matter. It's not up to you. Watch the show, and that will tell you what their statement was. I mean, it's great, and I can appreciate more communication is better, and I would agree with that, but this is a asinine complaint, right? I'm always for more communication, and I agree that, yeah, it's great if you can keep everybody on the same page with every single show, because that creates more cohesion and works more as a team, and that's fantastic, and that's great to have, but if you don't have it, it's not a slight. And Matt it seems to me that what Matt's portraying is that he feels like he was slighted because he wasn't getting information that he felt entitled to. But he wasn't entitled to this information to begin with. Though I can understand what, and Dan makes a good point here. I appreciate the perspective of Matt's feelings being hurt. Valid, absolutely. His feelings being hurt on the matter, totally valid. I think it's important to acknowledge the overarching message I'm hearing from Matt, which is terrible communication. And I agree with that as well. I've only got Matt's word to go off of here, but there's information. He's complaining that he's not getting information that's not for him in the first place. He's like, why aren't you communicating with me about this thing I have no relation to? Why aren't you giving me information about something that is none of my business? Right? What happens on Talk Heathen is no longer Matt's concern. Especially after he made it clear earlier on when he first left the board that he didn't want anything to do with it. That he didn't want anything. He waived that. He's like, I don't want to influence anybody else's stuff. I don't want to influence the board. I don't want to influence that. Then why are you asking for information that you're not entitled to? Right? So again, I can sympathize with wanting to have a more open and better communicated scenario, but you're also asking for information after you threatened to leave. So now you're saying, well, why aren't you I threatened to leave. Why aren't you telling me about this other show? Well, maybe they don't want to give you information about this other show because they don't know what you're going to do with it. They don't know how you're throwing your weight around behind closed doors or who you're talking to who about what. We also know that over the past year or so, there are people leaving because they didn't like, volunteers that were leaving because they didn't like the way Matt Dillahunty treated the people working on those shows. So like the overarching context here is that Matt wasn't being communicated to. It would be really problematic if the host of Talk Heathen wasn't given the information of what he was supposed to read ahead of time. That would be problematic. But Matt's running a whole other show that's completely unrelated. And there's a really good chance that the board or whoever your PR person was didn't want a problem that happened on one show to suddenly eke its way into every other aspect and trying to keep it contained so it did as minimal damage to the group, to the audience, to the individuals that were hurt by whatever had gone on. These are what Matt is describing is reasonable decision making that is being fed through a filter of his hurt feelings. And again, his feelings are valid. He can be upset. He can be like, I was the board. I put so many years into this. I feel like I should have a say on what's going on. And I get that. But he waived his rights to that. He waived all that and said he didn't have any influence. He didn't have anything. But here he is describing how he was trying to throw his influence around. You can't have it both ways. And it sucks. And it sucks for you. And it sucks for people who liked working with you. This is a very much, we have a difference of opinion and we're going our separate ways.
Was it an apology? Was it about the apology? Was it about me leaving? It turns out they promoted the apology on both shows, which was more than I had demanded, and it's what they had refused to do. So if I had quit on that Thursday, they were going to do more than I asked without bothering to tell me that they were meeting demands. This is either shitty communication or an intentional attempt to set me up if I had actually quit. Why, after threatening to quit if they don't read it, would they refuse to do it, then secretly go?
Because you started off. Why do you expect people to communicate with you after you've threatened to leave? So now they're already treating you as if you've threatened to leave. So they're not telling. Did you join the Discord to find out what they were saying? Did you go and read the apology that they wrote? No, you didn't even know they posted one. This isn't, communication is a two-way street here. You can't expect everybody to spoon feed you every single thing and every single decision they're making when you are not involved in that decision-making process anymore. You chose to not be a part of that decision-making process anymore. It's not their job to inform you on all of these things. And when you threaten to leave, cutting communication off with you and not telling you what is happening is exactly what you would expect.
And do more. I waited a week before saying, hey, I'm still looking for answers to the questions. And this is when the person I was told to talk to wrote me back saying that they can't tell me those things. They won't give me the details. And then they said, I'm not going to play word games with you, Matt. You know very well what I'm talking about if you have further questions, and then directed me to a subordinate. Why is this person directing me to subordinate to answer the policy questions that they had talked to me about? Why?
I want to speak to your manager. Because the policies should be written down, and you should already know them, and you should already have access to them. If you don't have access to them, and they're not written down, this is a different problem. You playing semantics and playing word games about whatever the policies are to demand answers that you already have the answer to and have already been written down for you, that you are a part of because you are a director, then they think you're fucking with them. And there's a decent chance that you are fucking with them. You're trying to throw your weight around, and it's not working. You got given to a subordinate because the subordinate has the answers and they don't need to waste their time on you. And they feel like you're wasting their time. Were you wasting their time? Maybe. You might have been. Again, if we look very, very beginning of this video, when we watched it, he said that he felt that he was insulted and disrespected. Maybe because you waived your position of power and you waived your position of being entitled to information that you are no longer entitled to. You are being disrespected because you were being disrespectful. Not only did you waive that position, but you actively went out of your way to say, I didn't want to influence anything. And then when you weren't just, hey, give me this information. Oh, yes, sir. Yes, Matt Dillahunty, sir. Here's your information, sir. Would you like a bow wrapped on it? I sprayed some perfume on it, sir. Here's some cookies. Miscommunication is a two-way street here. It sounds to me that there's a decent reason why they wouldn't want and didn't want to give you any information. And again, in a bubble, yeah, Matt would be 100% correct here and in the right for being fucking, like, being a dick. Like, for them being a dick to him. However, Matt Dillahunty has been notoriously problematic for years when it comes to public perception, when it comes to communication, when it comes to behavior and aggressiveness to staff and volunteers, as per those volunteers that have spoken up. Now, if those people are just lying, well, okay. But I mean, we can look at just how aggressive he is on shows. And you can see the number of people who left the ACA from, you know, the original mission that Matt's trying to protect here. So what are we looking at? Nothing like telling black women to shut up about racism. Yeah, that was a video. Go watch that one. Oh, go watch that.
Are they suggesting that I'm arguing dishonestly and playing word games when all I'm trying to do is find out what the policies are? I legitimately and honestly asked for information, and I got accused of word games and possibly accused of threats and intimidation, although they wouldn't answer that question. They talk me others.
I was just asking questions for this information that I should already have access to. You want to know why people were thinking that? And I haven't even seen the emails because he's deciding not to show them to people. There might be some that he doesn't have. He's the one who said that he did have them and didn't want to pull them up from his backup or from wherever he has them buried. According to makes a good point. If he didn't have the info, why would he ask? I think you mean if he had the info, why would he need to ask? And the answer is that it seems to me, from what he's expressing here, that the subordinate had the information, meaning he was climbing the ladder with something that he already got the answer to. This is a situation of you got an answer and you're not happy with the answer you got, so you're escalating.
Talked me into convincing. I wanted us to staying. I wanted us to apologize. Was told we wouldn't.
And just to be clear, I'll read this out. Just again to be clear, he doesn't have the emails because they canceled his email. Are you even watching the video? Yeah, I am watching the video. If you heard what he said that he lost access to the email and that he has emails that he's not showing because he doesn't want to dig them out from wherever he has them saved. That is what he said. So he's got some of them, if not all of them, and he's choosing not to show them. I recommend rewatching.
Then they went ahead and did it anyway. It seemed like sabotage. Does this organization want me gone is going through my head because I'm tired of saying this is critical and the right thing to do. And they say, no, we're not going to do it. We're not going to give you a reason. And then they go and do it anyway after I threaten to quit. Between the absence of communication on several emails for days or weeks and the terrible tone-deaf reply from a member, added to the, no, we won't, yes, we will, whatever. What am I supposed to think? The truth is nobody knows what's going on. It's as if this org won't say, hey, we're going to do X, because saying so would actually commit them to answering questions if it doesn't happen. And if you don't have the number of people and the volunteers, and COVID has made things even more difficult, this is not just saying, oh, they're all incompetent. That is not what I'm saying. But you can't commit to stuff if you don't have the people to do it. So they just don't.
No, that makes sense. You shouldn't expect a company to commit to doing something that they can't do because they don't have the resources to do so. I agree with what he's saying here, but I'm not sure I entirely understand what he's getting at. He seems to be justifying and complaining about it at the same time. He's like, well, they should be doing this, but if they don't have the resources to do so, then it makes sense that they can't commit to the things, but they're not committing to anything. It's like, yeah, they're not committing to anything because they can't, like you just said. So I don't really... Maybe I'm just not getting that one. Maybe I'm just not understanding that complaint in particular. Maybe I'm just misunderstanding what he's saying here. So I'll leave that at that. But
Changed this organization, and now the members have no say in this organization. And I understand that that was necessary. That's way, moving forward, that's more like American atheist model. But my reputation is the one that is the most on the line. And yet I'm just being told no, with no reason, with no access to even know who's making decisions, accused of playing word games, labeled as a potential enemy of the organization. And now I have the least say in a show where I'm the host, the producer, and the person who gets shit on whenever anybody in the organization does something that might provoke a response. How?
That's the position you chose to be in. And then you threw your weight around and it backfired. You chose not to have the influence. I'm saying this, I feel like I'm repeating myself because I am. You chose to no longer be in a position. You chose to even step back. You said you weren't throwing your weight around, then described how you were throwing your weight around, that it failed and backfired on you spectacularly, that, yeah, maybe they do want to get rid of you now. That might be a fair decision on their part. You're throwing your weight around and potentially trying to intimidate people, depending on how that gets taken. That'll be up to the individual. That's why I said potentially. Might not have been intentional. Why is the atheist community always falling apart? Because there's nothing that ties the community together at any time in any kind of moral nor political standpoint. Atheism is just, I believe there are no gods. At least if you believe in a god, you're likely to follow that god's tenets. When it comes to atheism, there is no standard tenet to follow. So there is no general agreement between all atheists about anything from a political nor a moral standpoint. So there's literally nothing that ties these people together as a group at all. If you'd like to hear more about this, go check out another video on my channel where I had the Free Thought Prophet guys coming around and have a conversation about that, because that was fun and interesting. Yeah. Is this why Tracy Harris and other hosts left? I'm pretty sure maybe it wasn't Tracy. I know that a couple of the previous hosts have done interviews and talked about why they had left, so you might want to just go try to find those. That's the point. The ACA wants him gone, and he realized that, so he left. So what's the problem here? Yeah, I mean, if that was the case and what had happened, that you would be better. I would argue that Matt would be better off just saying that. Right? It's saying that, like, listen, they didn't want me to work with them anymore for whatever reason, so I decided not to work with them anymore. That's what I did with Steve. Steve didn't want to work with me anymore. He made it very clear that he wanted to push me out of the show, so I left. I didn't take anything with me. What did I take? My skill. That's what I took with me. This really needs to be noted. Eric, Vi, Autumn, Rudy, Shane, and Jenna all got shit from Matt for airing grievances publicly with the ACA when they left, but it's clearly okay for Matt to do it. Yeah, that was something that I wanted to bring up near the end. Godless Scummer, that's a really good point. I do happen to have a vague memory of Matt complaining about people making their issues with the ACA public while he was still kind of important over there. And now that he's in that position, he's totally fine with it now. Go figure. He is right, though. Hosts got most effect, but have to deal with the decision that others make. He doesn't like that, so he quit. What's the problem here? Yeah, no, that's also, I agree with Rebus. I agree with you as well, absolutely. If he doesn't like the position, leave the position. The thing is that there was a change in the ACA when it got big enough, right? And when it got big enough, the board and legal has to start making decisions. Now, it's beneficial if the board and legal can loop in production at like a high level, so that way they can understand and know what production needs and wants. But if they don't and they choose to keep that separate, that's the format, and that is the environment that you're choosing or not choosing to work in. But Matt is treating these people like they're the bad guy here. When are they? It's not like, oh, all these situations just happened and they really made Matt look bad. No, Matt doesn't need help. He looks bad all on his own. Matt made the ACA look bad in plenty of circumstances, and they didn't abandon him. They didn't hang him out to dry. So what? Right? This is what I mean by there's a, like, in a bubble, if you just took what Matt was saying, yeah, he would be very sympathetic. But as soon as you look at, Matt in the past 5-10 years and what has gone on in the ACA and what's gone on with these situations, he doesn't really exactly come out looking like a diamond in the rough, if you know what I mean. Right? Ghost Dog said he should know you are the face and the face it hit. And Vandella said, could totally use your skills because I have none. It just takes practice. But point being, Rebus says this is what he's saying. He's not left the ACA. He left not because the ACA was wrong, but because ACA treated him wrong. That's what I got from his video. I'm not. I see what you're saying. I don't think I'm quite getting the same vibe. I'm getting the vibe of I want my cake and I want to eat it too. I want to say, like, the ACA is still great. Now let me do this 30-minute video shitting on them and telling everybody that they treated me so poorly. But I don't want anything bad for the ACA. They're just treating me like I'm a villain all of a sudden. It's almost like they predicted you would do a video like this if they let you go, which is why they didn't tell you anything. I also agree with Rebus here as well. It says, yeah, you can still support the ACA for whatever reasons if you so desire. Like, I'm not going to tell you not to support whoever. You do what you want. I think it's a good decision for him to leave. If he feels like he's not being treated fairly or he feels like he's being treated poorly, then I agree. He should absolutely not stay there. That would not be good for him. That wouldn't be good for people that have to put up with him. In that kind of position, that would just be bad for everybody. So I absolutely agree with that. I'm sorry. I think your name is Voodoo, which is a fantastic name, and I absolutely love that. But I don't think I understand your question. Sorry, if you don't mind rephrasing. I'm not 100% sure. Delay.
How completely unfair is that? This used to be a participatory organization. That's gone. I can't vote on a new board. I can't be on the board. I wasn't invited to an advisory board. I don't think they've started an advisory board. I don't get replies to emails that I send to the board. I get disrespected and dismissed by an employee, and someone else gets to make a decision that impacts my reputation. How can I stay?
Fair, but no. You're asking to be treated special. I don't disagree with Matt deciding he wants to leave because he's not being treated in a way he thinks he deserves to be treated. Totally fair. But for the sake of understanding, he's asking to be treated better or with special intention, or like he wants special perks. He wants more than what they're willing to give him, and he feels entitled to get those things. I don't think he's entitled to those things. I don't think he's entitled to information about other people's shows and how they're moving forward on something. I don't think he's entitled to go to board meetings when he's not a board member, right? So although he can feel that way all he wants, and his feelings are valid, and if that's the reason he's choosing to leave, that he's totally within his right to do so. However, I think he's incorrect to think that he's entitled to the shit he thinks he's entitled to.
But I kept trying. Since then, mail that was sent to me at the atheist community got delivered to me, opened by somebody else. And I don't mind that much, but it's a little concerning. And there's issues with the website. And the Bat Cruise announcement wasn't that good. And we still don't have a full board 10 months later. And I'm not getting replies to email. And a couple of weeks ago, I filed a complaint.
But he was getting replies to emails. Just not, he was talking about how he got replies to email while he was on his way to a movie. So you were getting replies to emails, just not at the rate that you wanted, or you weren't getting the answers that you wanted. Which you're fine to be upset about. Okay.
Against the person who had implicitly accused me of playing word games and arguing dishonestly, as both a blatant insult on my character and a direct dereliction of duty, because it's their job to answer me and not to blow me off and attack my character and direct me to a subordinate. I was told 30 minutes after sending that email that the issue had been addressed.
Somebody didn't want to put up with your shit. So they directed you. And you got real mad about it. You got real mad about it. And the reason I'm only mentioning this now is because he's brought this up multiple times. You attacked my character and then disrespected me and shuffled me off to an employee instead of dealing with me yourself, saying that you answered my email. Did they answer your email? Did you just get an answer you didn't like? Were you trying to play semantic games? Because again, when he described the questions he was asking, they sounded sarcastic. We already know he was trying to throw his weight around. So yeah, it's going to hurt your ego if you try to throw your weight around and nobody cares. Sorry. I don't know what to tell you. It sucks when you find out you're not as important as you think you are. That's rough, buddy.
That's it. There was, hey, I talked to the person, it's been addressed, but there was no specifics. And so I followed up and I asked if there was an apology coming. And was I going to get an answer to my original questions about policy? Because that email that I just sent, I got a reply 30 minutes later. I asked, is there an apology coming and am I getting answers? That email has also never been addressed. Then 2 weeks ago, when I was at the building for the live show, I got there early. And during Talk Heathen, I went up to the leadership that was there. And I said, hey, I know you're busy, but between Talk Heathen and Atheist Experience, we really need to talk. And I got a nod. And then they didn't talk to me. They didn't talk to me that whole gap between Talk Heathen and Atheist Experience about the issue. And then when Atheist Experience was over, I said, well, we didn't get to talk today. We really need to talk. Can you send me an email and let me know when you have time to talk? I never got a reply to that either.
Yeah, people didn't have time for you anymore. You weren't in the same position you used to be in. All this sounds like is this guy's complaining that he got a reality check for the position he chose to be in. That's rough, buddy.
The conclusion from all of this is that the people who are there creating content for the atheist community of Austin are all wonderful volunteers who care about the mission, but they have no say or no control in what's going on. The most they can really do is talk to the production staff, and the production staff can then take that to the board. But the production staff also works for the board and has a financial duty and an obligation to build up content and make the organization better. The organization's communication skills are abysmal. I'm not saying I was any better when I ran it.
Sucks when you're on the receiving end. Okay. If you're going to discuss how much control the production staff or your volunteers that run the shows have over the board and vice versa, what do you mean? This is very vague, right? He's saying it's vaguely specific, which is a term you may have heard me use before if you're from around here. Vaguely specific means that you're being vague specifically. You're being vague about specific details. So when Matt says, whoever runs Talk Heathen has no control over what goes on at Talk Heathen. No control? At all? None? So you're going to need to give more specifics, right? So they're dedicated to the mission. Which mission? The ACA's mission has changed over the years. So which one are you talking about? The current one posted? The one from when you took over? The one from before you took over? Which mission are you talking about? On the other hand, if you're talking about how they don't have a say in whether or not the organization apologizes overall for a situation, yeah, no, that wouldn't be up to them, because that would be on the board and the legal staff, because they need to know what they can and cannot say in certain situations. That's the part of being an organization and being a nonprofit. You have to maintain an image, you have to maintain certain standards, and you have to maintain your legal integrity. Because if you don't get to be this thing anymore. Looking at you, Atheist Alliance International, if you can't maintain these things, you are not going to exist as a nonprofit anymore. You will lose that status. So when you say these people have no control over what happens on their show, if they're volunteers, what makes it their show? If a show is owned by Fox News and it's called Crossfire, and one of the hosts is Tucker Carlson, does Tucker Carlson own that show? The answer is no. Tucker Carlson does not own Crossfire. He can be replaced at any point in time, and I'm showing my age by talking about a stupid show called Crossfire. All right? It doesn't work like that. Bill O'Reilly gets a choice about some topics that go by the board or go by production or go by who's ever in charge of Fox News. And some hosts have more sway and pull than others because they have a large audience and they have a large draw to the show. That's what Matt tried to do. He tried to swing his influence and his power as a face to get the ACA to do something that they chose to not do. And he felt snuffed by that. Should he feel snuffed by that? Sure, maybe. I don't know. I'm not him. He can feel however he wants about it. But when you're going to make accusations and declarative statements, like the hosts have no control over their shows, prove to me they're their shows to begin with. Talk Heathen has had more than one host. ACA has had way more than one host on the Atheist Experience. So whose show is the ACA's? Is it Matt Dillahunty's show? Nope. So how much control are you expecting to have in a conglomerate? So let's take YTV, for example, or TVO, or Treehouse. Plenty of segmented shows have a host that's owned by Color Entertainment, owned by Fox, owned by Disney. The Disney Channel had multiple shows. Who owns Art Attack? On YouTube, I run this show. This is mine. But I'm the only one here. There's no other options. So when you say the hosts don't control their shows, it might not be their show to begin with. And that is entirely based on whether or not, or how, in fact, their contracts are written. And if they're volunteers, then they don't own shit. If you don't like the way that's run or they don't like that system, that's fine. That's fine. You don't have to like that system. That's totally okay. It's not a big deal. People have disagreements about structuring and the way things should be structured all the time, about how much power one person should have about which thing. The general manager at your local grocery store doesn't own that store. You would have to discuss the contracts involved. And if you really wanted to demonstrate that if Matt really wanted to demonstrate what he was saying was accurate, he's not talking about how much control he had over the atheist experience. Why not? Why are you talking about, why is Matt talking about the control that other people have over their shows? Those people aren't complaining. Matt's just speaking for them. None of these people have come forward to complain that the board is overstepping in their power about what is and is not shown on this show. Only Matt's complaining about this. And you know who else I heard complaining? Other hosts saying that Matt was overstepping in shows that he didn't have any involvement with. And as soon as the ACA started pulling that power away from him and started stopping him from having that kind of influence, he threw a fucking hissy fit. No, Manya doesn't co-own Dumbfuck Friday. Dumbfuck Friday started before Manya. But if we wanted to work out some kind of deal on that, we'd probably make it its own channel. But anyway, if he really wanted to demonstrate his point, he should be using himself as the example, not speaking for other people, and he should be using his own contract or whatever and be talking about that in general. Like, he should be talking about his own specific experience and not speaking for others.
Maybe I caused part of this problem. But even after hiring a director of communications, there's not much in the way of posts on the website. There's not much interaction. I doubt anybody even watching this has any clue what's been going on, other than maybe some of you are aware that we're back in the building once a month. At a membership meeting recently, the presentation from one of the directors went on and on about how it's an awesome nonprofit that pays their employees well with great benefits, and that's all true. And they spent a couple sentences at the end of their presentation addressing the mission. Interestingly, they've recently posted a new mission statement on the website. I guess it feels like they accomplished something getting the corporate busy work done. So let's spray paint it on the wall of the building, because that'll help them think they're on mission when they're not. Or,
you know, corporate busy work and legal that you're complaining about, Matt, are the things that keep you in business. They're the things that let you be a nonprofit in the first place. You may not want to shit all over them all the time. You can disagree with them, but if they don't do their jobs, here's looking at you, Atheist Alliance International.
maybe they are. I have multiple emails that went completely unanswered or got, on a couple of occasions, vague lawyerly responses. The corporate layer has hindered communication. And for me personally, I don't know about for anybody else, it feels more like the Atheist Corporation of Austin than the Atheist Community of Austin. They ignored direct appeals to talk and to try to resolve this. The board has dwindled to 6 people, just one more than the number of employees as far as I can tell. And I feel like I got ghosted. It was even suggested that I could leave amicably and keep working with them when I threatened to quit, like I could be the Paul leaving the Beatles type of thing. To which I responded that if we're still on the same mission, there's...
You just compare himself to Paul McCartney? Hey, I'm just going to take this time to encourage you all to like and subscribe and hit that member button if you like what I do here. Try and think about becoming a Patreon or find me on Twitter. Woo!
There's no reason for me to leave. If this is still a place that values my input, there's no reason for me to leave. I can definitely appreciate wanting the organization to not be forced to take...
Sorry, I'm going to put this back just so we get the whole context of what he said, because I don't want to clip him out, but I'm pretty sure I just heard him say, if this is a place that still values my input.
Number of employees, as far as I can tell. And I feel like I got ghosted. It was even suggested that I could leave amicably and keep working with them when I threatened to quit, like I could be the Paul leaving the Beatles type of thing. To which I responded that if we're still on the same mission, there's no reason for me to leave. If this is still a place that values my input, there's no reason for me to leave. I can definitely appreciate...
Yeah, if they still value my input. But you're complaining that they're not doing what you tell them to do. That's different than value. You can value somebody's input and not do what they've said. right? Like, you can value what somebody says and take it to heart, but not implement it the way they would implement it, right? It's like when you ask for advice from a handful of your friends. Not all of them are going to give you the same fucking advice. You're going to take bits and pieces and then process that information and then do the best with the information you have. That's valuing somebody's input. Just doing whatever somebody tells you to do isn't valuing their input. That's just being a pushover or a doormat.
Wanting the organization to not be forced to take action by the big fish threatening to quit. But when it's about trying to get them to do the right thing and they say no, and they dismiss the threat that I'm going to quit, and then ultimately they do more than what I asked, that feels like a setup. That feels like sabotage. The presenters on the ACA shows are volunteers. They should have a say in what happens. They should get responses to their concerns. And when they do get responses, it shouldn't be vague, it has been addressed emails. And when they reach out to say, we need to talk, they shouldn't wait and hear nothing. Whether somebody's trying to avoid confrontation or put a nice face on everything. If this is the sort of response that I get,
nobody has to work with you. I don't know how to make this more clear. You're no longer in a position of power. You are on equal footing with the other hosts and other production staff. The other production staff does not have to schedule a meeting with you if they do not want to. You are not entitled to that. You can request it, but all your requests sound like demands with the way you're describing them. Hey, we're going to talk in between shows. Hey, I wanted to talk to you in between shows. Hey, you're not answering my emails, or you're not answering my emails to my satisfaction. That's not up to you anymore. You gave up that position of power, dude. My God. No. I also am going to have to ask for confirmation from other ACA volunteers if they have the same expectations and are running into the same problems that Matt Dillahunty's running into. And again, can we not pretend that Matt Dillahunty exists in a bubble? And Matt Dillahunty has been plenty of all problematic for the overarching public view of the ACA. So it's not like the ACA, even if the ACA wanted to force him out or get rid of him entirely, their PR team has a good enough reason to do so without all this rigmarole, which, just might have been in the process of.
As a two-time president, producer, host, the guy who's been here the longest, what hope does anybody else have? If they'll dismiss my concerns, and then when a couple other people chime in, they'll go ahead and do it, what reason do they have to consider anybody else's? And how much of a say is anybody who's out there putting their name, their...
Nobody's listening to me, therefore they're not listening to anybody else. Shut up.
face and their reputation on the line by making statements have, when the people behind the scenes who don't have skin in the game quite often, or at least not much, are making decisions that affect that. After announcing my departure, despite being a life member, two-time president, longest-serving host and producer, they didn't send me a single email. They didn't send me a single text message.
Hey, can y'all remind me, if you go and look at the history of the ACA, all about Beth, who spent years and gave up a whole ton of her life to the atheist experience? Can you please point to me where her paragraphs and where her input is acknowledged on that site? Oh, it's not? Matt's ex-wife is not, in her history and all the work that she did and all the effort and time and money that she put into that show, whether you agree with her and what she's done or hasn't done or not, is not available as information on the history of the site or history of the organization? Oh, they didn't treat me special and give me an email. Oh, boo, boo, boo. Oh, I quit and they didn't acknowledge me. After all the work I did, driving this thing into the ground. Maybe they don't view you as an asset, dude. Maybe they view you as a hindrance. And maybe they have for a long time. And maybe a lot of atheists that are in the online sphere have viewed you as a hindrance because you've enabled atheists and encourage atheists in the online sphere to act like fucking assholes about everything and encourage miscommunication about philosophy. Or just wrong information. Maybe. I don't know. I'm not part of the ACA. Take what I say with a matter of opinion.
They didn't attempt to call me. They disabled my ACA email address. They publicly said something nice about me, while privately said nothing and cut me off despite all of this.
That is not uncommon. So you're mad that they publicly acknowledged you, but not that like you expected a private email. That's normal. It's normal for when somebody who leaves an organization to no longer communicate with them anymore because you don't want to get yourselves in trouble by giving out information that that person should no longer have access to, or accidentally get into fights, or get accused of harassment, or et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. This is all normal. This is all normal. But he got a public acknowledgement. That was the thing he was complaining about the apology, that it needed to be public and in this particular way, not just in back rooms. And then it was public, and that still wasn't good enough for him because they didn't do it in the terms that he said that he wanted in the way that he wanted them to do it, and he kept demanding information that they just didn't give him. This is, I created my own problem. That's what this is.
How many other life members lost their email address? I hadn't said anything publicly negative about the ACA at all, and honestly, I don't think I still am.
No, you are. You're trying to, at least.
Where the problems are, and it's administrative, and it is a conflict between myself and the ACA, and I'm not speaking for anybody but me.
All of that was not true. You've been shitting on them. You've been downplaying and treating people who are on equal level as you in the hierarchy of business as if they were lower than you. You are trying to paint them as if they tried to set you up and have accused them of such. You also were making demands of them that you are not in a position to make demands for. And, shall I go on? You are absolutely doing these things. The lack of self-awareness in that statement is mind-boggling.
This organization is peopled by great volunteers who are doing great work, who care about the mission. And they should be respected and valued both by the organization and by those of you who watch the content. But this organization deserves no more of my time, no more of my consideration, no more of my input, no more of my content, and I'll be moving on with my life. My mission continues just as before. I'm moving on. I'm doing shows. I might be doing a show on Sundays at 4:30. I'm still deciding.
So are you continuing to work with Jimmy Snow? At least now everybody will know that the Jimmy Snow show, if you're doing it, is not and was not and never has been associated with the ACA. So people won't accidentally give money to it thinking that they're helping out atheists and they're actually just lining your guys' pockets.
Why give up a time slot that I built over years when I still have work to do?
Why give up a time slot that I've built up over years? Sunday afternoons? Time exists and has for quite some time, and time slots on shows have been a long-standing thing for a very long time. So tell me you're going to try and scalp the Atheist Experience audience without telling me you're trying to scalp the Atheist Experience audience. But he doesn't want anything bad to happen to the ACA. He wants people to still support them, but just pick between him and them. It's only an ultimatum.
So today, in just 7 minutes, go watch Forrest and Dave. They're phenomenal.
I don't know who that is.
They're wonderful people. Do not harass them. Do not call the show about this. Do not pester the ACA. Do not send hate mail. Do not do any of the things. This is done.
Oh, you mean that Matt Dillahunty is telling his fans that they should not go onto other people's platforms to try and stir shit for people having opinions about what's gone on? It seems to have fallen on deaf ears, I said as I looked over at my live chat. You're gonna make Matt Dillahunty sad, guys.
Keep it about the mission. Support me, support them, support both, support neither, whatever you feel is the right thing to do. I did not make this statement.
Do the right thing and do whatever you feel like you should do and support whoever involved, because I didn't just spend a half an hour shitting on these people and talking about how awful they were and how they didn't do their job and how they don't care about the mission and how yada and they treat their volunteers so badly, allegedly, according to one person who's been accused of treating volunteers badly in the past. Uh-huh. Yeah. Go support this organization that I just basically called corrupt.
I have work to do. So today, in just 7 minutes, go watch Forrest and Dave. They're phenomenal. They are wonderful people. Do not harass them. Do not call the show about this. Do not pester the ACA. Do not send hate mail. Do not do any of the things. This is done. Keep it about the mission. Support me, support them, support both, support neither, whatever you feel is the right thing to do. I did not make this statement to cause damage to anybody or the organization. I want them all to do better, and their communication skills are beyond abysmal. When I sit around crying for months, waiting for anything that feels like the organization I've been a part of to reach out.
Why don't they care about me more when I try to throw my weight around? My shirt is Bob Ross. Bob Ross.
I've never asked anybody to leave the organization because of any of this or anything. I've never told anybody to not support the organization, but you can't do that. This is called, again, we're back to, I want to have my cake and eat it too. I want to be in the right in this situation. I want everybody else to validate me in the situation. But I don't want to take responsibility for what I'm saying and how that might affect people's view of the organization, even though I want people to view the organization as mistreating me and mishandling situations and becoming corporate and forgetting the mission, but still support them. I'm not telling you not to support them. I'm not doing that. You can't have your cake and eat it too. Either the organization is problematic and against the mission and no longer doing what they set out to do and are treating people poorly, or it's fine and you're just being a bitch. My God, you are telling people that the organization is bad and has treated you poorly, but give them money. This is contradictory. What are you talking about? Somebody suggested I threatened to leave and take a bunch of people with me, which is absolutely not true.
No, that's half true. You did threaten to leave. Whether or not you were going to take people with you, I don't know. I mean, you're saying that you're going to try to take the audience with you. That's why you're talking about that time slot that you worked so hard to create. And this is where we get into, I wonder why people thought you were playing semantics. Because, well, I threatened to leave. And this person said I would threaten to leave and that I would take other people with me. Well, maybe you would have taken other people with you when you left. Maybe that wouldn't have been intentional. Maybe you weren't reaching out to people. But the result of that can be that other half of that statement. But you called that statement absolutely not true, which is absolutely not true. The statement was half correct, at the very least, which you've said already. Who's the one who's having problem with communications here, Matt? Who's giving off mixed messages? Who's the one saying shit that doesn't line up with the other shit? Who's getting emails that are answering them, that are being questions that are being addressed that you're like, no, they haven't.
And because they made that accusation, I got labeled an enemy of the organization, and everything communication-wise deteriorated from there, and it was already abysmal.
You threatened to leave, and so they stopped communicating with you. Yeah, you threw your weight around and it backfired. End of story. TLDR. Matt wanted the ACA to do something. He wasn't sure that they were going to do it because they didn't communicate with him about whether or not what they were doing because they were still deciding. He threatened to leave and threw his weight around. It backfired because not only did they do originally what he had said, but they actually went above and beyond that. But they stopped communicating because he had already tried to throw his weight around. And then they stopped communicating with him as much as possible, including amongst the various shows and production staff. He felt slighted by it, and he left. There you go.
What I mentioned was that I had talked to some of the people and that they were waiting to see what happened with the organization and with me before they made up their minds about what they were doing.
And Godless Scummer said it perfectly. Matt knows full well that by doing this video, he's going to be taking people away from the ACA and the Atheist Experience audience. He is full of shit, and he doesn't have any self-awareness about it at all, and that's me being charitable. I am charitably saying that he is lacking self-awareness and saying instead of saying that he's intentionally lying.
There are great presenters on these shows doing great work. I think Forrest and Dave are on today. They deserve your respect. They deserve you to watch. They deserve for you to pay attention. But the leadership of the organization and the people who they've hired who fail to understand what this organization actually was and should be is just wholly inconsistent with what I wish to support and work with. I'd like to be where I'm the one in charge of my reputation, where I'm not being ghosted, disrespected, ignored, and where the mission isn't just a crafted corporate message, but something that we live.
Then you should have chosen to stay on the board instead, which is an error on your part and not anyone else's. But, hindsight's 2020. I'm not going to say that, this other decision could have been better. Great, yeah, whatever. But don't blame other people for that. That's the part I'm taking issue with.
Thanks, everybody who sat through this entire message. I hope it's taken in the spirit that it's offered.
Oh, you're welcome.
I am serious when I say I am moving on. I don't plan to address this again. I'm not taking questions today. I will probably leave this video up. But the important thing is there are people dedicated to this mission at the ACA, and there are people who are dedicated to this mission outside of the ACA. I am one of them, and while I am now flying solo, I want to thank all of you who participated and contributed for the 17 years that I did this show. And I'm not stopping. I hope to see you all elsewhere. Have a great rest of your day and go watch the Atheist Experience with Forrest and Dave. I'll see y'all later. Bye-bye.
All right. Well, that was what Matt Dillahunty had to say on the situation. I'm happy to say it wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. I definitely thought this was going to be a lot worse and a lot more aggressive. Most of what he said in a bubble, understandable. Most of what he said from a human perspective and how he feels about the situation, valid, totally understandable. Within the context of Matt Dillahunty's history, I would not be surprised to find out or to guesstimate that this representation of what happened is definitely color-coded. And I would say that there's some contradictory bullshit in there that's pretty easy to tell is bullshit. We are at the 2-hour mark. Thank you all so much for joining me. I want to overstay my welcome. I hope you guys found something interesting to consider or to discuss. I look forward to the comment section. Go tell me how much you hate me and how awful I am. Feel free to consider joining or becoming a member or follow or hit the button or whatever the hell. I look forward to seeing you all next time. There are a couple of things that I've found recently that I want to look at and talk about. and it is a little bit related to atheism, which isn't usually my cup of tea, or like what I go and discuss. But I saw somebody on Twitter asking a bunch of questions, and I'm like, you know what? Let's cover some of these. So look out for some of that. There's going to be some new D&D content coming down the way. On Thursday, we're going to be talking about Halloween and horror. And that's going to be a lot of fun for Debate Hub, so join me for that. And I will also be back with Manya on Friday for Dumb Feck Friday. And we're going to be doing a video a little bit more similar to one of these. I'm out of here. Find me on Twitter and stuff. I'll see you guys next time. And last little thought on the matter is
this guy is unfucking believable.
Bye.